Well, it's a small country of only 17 million people, but the election this week in the Netherlands was closely watched by a lot more people than that, especially in Europe. Today, moderates are breathing a sigh of relief after Dutch voters chose the middle road and rejected the leader of a populist, anti-Muslim, anti-European Union movement. The election gives some hope to European centrists as Germany and France get ready to hold their own elections very soon. VOA's Europe correspondent Luis Ramirez has our report.
Dutch voters have given a second chance to the centrists, despite a wave of anger over an immigration policy some believe has allowed this tiny but influential nation to become flooded with Muslim newcomers. Anti-Islam candidate Geert Wilders concedes he lost this battle, but not the war he is fighting against a culture he says oppresses women and gay people.
I would have rather been the largest party in this election. It's a pity that we did not succeed in that. We have to wait until the next election, but we are a party that did not lose.
Wilders did not win a majority, but his party gained seats in parliament, while the center-right party, though retaining its plurality, lost ground overall. The Netherlands is a tiny nation with a population of only 17 million people, but it is an economic and cultural giant, a symbol of modern Western liberalism.
So, what does the Dutch election mean for the rest of Europe? Joining us now to talk about that from our London studio, we have VOA European correspondent Luis Ramirez, who filed that report for us. And joining me right here in Washington, international broadcaster Jane Bojadzievski with VOA's Macedonian service. I thank both of you for being on the program. Thank you very much. But Luis, I want to start with you. By the way, thanks for that report. So, Luis, what was the mood like ahead of Wednesday's election? Were there concerns there that after Brexit, after the U.S. election, that the Netherlands might actually be the country to complete that populist trifecta?
Well, certainly it was seen as a very real possibility, Mil, because we had the polls neck and neck showing the party of Wilders in a virtual tie with the center-right party, the ruling party, and so it was seen as something that definitely could have happened. But we saw then that Wilders' party's lead slipped in the polls as people saw it as a bit sobering. His very direct comments about Moroccan immigrants and questions emerged about whether that was in fact the type of country that the Dutch really wanted. And so we saw a slip in the polls. No one really expected Wilders to come out on top, but certainly they expected him to make a strong showing, which he did.
And Jane, you know, you filed a report earlier this week suggesting the popularity of this man, Geert Wilders. Were you surprised, first of all, by the election results?
I was scared, but I'm not surprised. Why? Because it was a celebration of democracy, definitely not the wrong kind of populist. It was a win for the value of openness, respect to the others, for the fate of the European Union. The Dutch showed their way.
There were a lot of very relieved people, but Jane, I want you to talk to us a little bit about this Geert Wilders, the leader of the Freedom Party. He's often been compared to President Donald Trump. How do you, as a European, explain his popularity?
I'm not quite sure that we've seen the last of him, of his movement. Definitely, he won 4 or 5 seats in the parliament. He campaigned on pledges of banning the Muslim immigrants, of closing mosques, of prohibiting the sales of Quran, of promoting the idea of dismantling the European Union. I think that kind of idea doesn't get a lot of support among the Dutch people. It was a counter-reaction. They say, this is not the way where we want to go, and they show up.
But there is obviously a solid group that are backing that. But Luis, let me get you back into this. So voter turnout in the Netherlands was unusually high, something like 81%. What does that tell us about Dutch voters?
Well, it tells us that the voters were certainly galvanized by the issues here. These are issues that went to the very core of what is Dutch society, what are Dutch values, and of course the Netherlands, small but very influential country, known certainly very close to the United States in terms of its championing of modern Western liberal values. And so what you had were those liberal values at war with each other, something that made people really want to go to the polls. On the one hand, you had the value of multiculturalism, represented here by the center-right. And on the other hand, you had a movement or a person who is pushing the also very liberal values of protecting the rights of women and gay people. That's Wilders' position. And so these issues really went to the heart and really fired up the voters. That's why you saw this high turnout.
And Jane, there is indeed this strong support for that kind of xenophobic approach to the rest of the world in pockets of Europe, particularly with the refugee crisis that's going on here. I'm wondering, does this election forebode possible events coming in the future? France is holding its election, so is Germany later on this fall. What kind of impact do you think this election might have on the politics in that region?
Many Europeans are still afraid from the migrants, unfortunately. Is this the country where we belong? Is this where we are born? That's the sentiment. That will be the crucial factor in the upcoming elections. France picks president in April. Germany held elections in September. I think the main thing is that creates some anxiety among the voters.
Sure.
And I think we'll have to wait till April if Marine Le Pen is a serial contender for the French elections.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that. But Luis, getting back to you, despite losing to the Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, the Freedom Party managed to gain 5 seats. So how does that complicate the formation of a new Dutch parliament, Luis?
That tells us that Wilders remains very much a force to contend with, and he's also a huge factor in this complication because it's his very person that is causing people in other that would form other parts of this coalition to say we don't want to sit at the table with this man. And so we're looking at a process that's going to be very long, very complex. Some are saying that it's going to take months before the Netherlands has a coalition government in place.
Jane, I've been told to wrap already, but in a very brief amount of time we have, as a proud European, are you concerned at all about what's happening in Europe? Is the Europe that you know changing?
Unfortunately, the political landscape in Europe is changing. We want to admit that or not, but still, we have to give a kudos to the Dutch because they were a nation that set an example.
They spoke out, didn't they?
And we are, at the end of the day, we are all Irish. So happy St. Patrick's Day to you also, Mel.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Luis Ramirez.